All right. Hello, everyone. Accounting 219 managerial accounting students at Alabama A&M University. This is for you. I wanted to discuss the process costing review problem. Now you'll see there is a review problem at the end of every chapter. So we have one for the process costing chapter as well. After posting the video on process costing, I thought that a practical demonstration would be helpful. And you'd be able to use it to solve end of chapter problems or answer quizzes and answer multiple choice questions. All right, so let's start. This is about a paint manufacturing company. The name of the company is called Luxgard Home Paint Company. Luxgard. Anyway, the name of the company is immaterial. They have two departments, two production departments. One is called the base fab and the other one is the finishing department. So there is description about what each of these departments do. That's also more or less immaterial. All right, so let's come to the point. The important issues, the important information in the problem includes the number of units that were already there at the beginning, in the beginning working process at the beginning of April. So April is the month that we have been working, and April is the month of focus. We have to calculate the unit costs of the finished units as well as of the work in process units at the end of April. So let's see how many units were there at the beginning of April in the base fab department. There is incomplete data about the second department, about the finishing department, because the question is primarily about the base fab, about the first department. All right, so what happened? At the beginning of April, the beginning work in process inventory was 30,000 units. So they had 30,000 units at the beginning of April in the beginning inventory of the base fab department, 30,000 units. And then they added 420,000 units during the month. So we have to account for a total of 450,000 units by the end of April. So remember, these 450,000 units are physical units, but not necessarily all of them are 100% finished goods or 100% complete. But nevertheless, I could be like a minor, you could be an adult, or I could be an adult, you could be a minor, but we still are two individual people here, two complete people. So in terms of total number of units, it is 450,000. But in terms of equivalent units, equivalence is different, because you could say, well, one adult is equivalent to two minors. You know, sometimes like when we were young, we used to receive rationing of different products like sugar, soybean oil, wheat, and stuff like that. So my dad was a high school teacher, and high school teachers were entitled to government rationing. You know, in the early 80s, there was large scale poverty in the country that I'm from, which is Bangladesh. So we used to receive ration. Now for rationing, the minors, like we, brothers and sisters, not all of us were considered to be full individual people. So in our ration card, we had 6.5 people, 6.5 people in our family. So that means adults, maybe we had 4 adults and 5 minors. So 5 minors together account for 2.5 people, plus the 4 adults would be 4. So 4 plus 2.5 would be equivalent to 6.5 adult individuals, adult human beings. Anyway, so I find quite some similarity between process costing equivalence and the rationing system equivalence in Bangladesh. Okay, anyway, so that's beside the point. Now, 450,000 total units, 30,000 to begin with, then they added 420,000. So that's 450. And then when the month ended, what happened, the company completed and finished, like completed and sent to the next department, which is the finishing department, a total of 370,000 units. So of the 450, 370 are now ready to go to the next department, and they have already been sent to transferred to the next department. But the remaining 70,000, the remaining 80,000 was still hanging around in the beginning, in the ending inventory of the base fab department, or in the ending work in process inventory of the department. So again, you see, we began with 30, then we added 420, so that make up 450. Now we have transferred 370 and we still have 80,000 individual units. So 80,000 plus 370 makes it 450. So you got the account. We needed to account for 450,000 units, and we are able to account for 450,000 units. Now, in terms of dollars, we also have to have this cost reconciliation. There is a statement that we have to prepare under process costing. It's called cost reconciliation report. There we show how much total cost, how much total resources we have thrown in, we have put in the process, including the beginning ones. So what's the cost of beginning inventory plus what's the cost, the dollar amount of resources that have been deployed into the process. So that's the total amount of cost to account for. And then we have to also show what is the total cost of the units transferred, completed units transferred to the next department, plus the total cost of the units that are still incomplete, that are partially complete and hanging around here, languishing here, waiting to be worked on. All right. So this is a summary of the problem as well as the solution. I'd like you to take a look at this. I have this practice of extracting the pertinent information from a long question. So this is what I did. You can see we have the two departments and we have three columns here: material, labor, and overhead. I didn't have a total column, not necessary. So material, labor, and overhead, and you can see beginning work in process. This is beginning in the base fab department. So the whole, all the discussions, the whole work is about the base fab department. So beginning work in process inventory in terms of materials was $92,000. In terms of labor was $21,000, and in terms of overhead was $37,000. So you can add the three numbers and you have the total cost of the beginning inventory. Beginning means at the beginning of April in the base fab department, or department number 1 in our first department. So that's the cost of beginning inventory. These are not the unit numbers, these are dollar amounts, the cost. And then we have added these resources. We have added some material, we have added some labor, and we have added some overhead. The overhead is not added, overhead is applied, has been applied, applied overhead. So how much material has been added? We have added $851,000 worth of material, $330,000 worth of labor, and applied $665,000 of overhead. So that's the total cost that we have injected, we have added to the already costly beginning inventory. So that gives us a total, some subtotals here, total material that we need to account for, or total cost of all the material that have been put in so far, including the beginning inventory, plus all the labor cost and all the overhead cost. So the total of these three is actually going to be the number that we have to account for. And that is what we have done here. Now to find out the unit costs, we need to, unit costs of the, especially of the ending inventory, we need to find out the equivalent units. Because without having a sense of equivalent units, we wouldn't be able to even find out the unit cost of the finished units. Why? Let me explain to you. Let's say I've been working on certain number of students, and I have spent, say, $1 million to teach them something. So of the $1 million, I have graduated 1,000 students, but I still have 200 students that are waiting to be graduated, that are waiting to graduate, that are waiting to complete. So $1 million, what do I divide it by? Do I divide by 1,200? I have $1,000, 1,000 students have graduated, but there are 200 more on campus, 200 more are still being trained. So in terms of total number, like our family, remember, 6.5 people. So in terms of total number, it wasn't 6.5. You couldn't have half a person, can you? But in terms of equivalence, in terms of equivalent people, equivalent adults, it is possible for you to be half an adult. So in terms of the total number of students that I taught, using $1 million worth of resources is 1,200, isn't it? 1,000 students that have gone to the next level, plus 200 who are still waiting to go. But if I divide the total number, $1 million by 1,200, I'm not going to get the unit cost of anything. That will not give me the unit cost of the ones who have graduated, nor the unit cost of the ones who are still here. So what I do to find out the unit cost of one complete product, one graduated student, I would need to find out the equivalent full-time students or equivalent graduates. So equivalent graduates means my 1,000 is 1,000 because they've all graduated, plus of the 200, I need to find out their degree of completion. If they have completed 80% of the credits, then I can multiply 200 by 0.8 or take 80% of 200. So that gives me 160 equivalent graduate students. So 160 plus 1,000 is 1,160. So if I divide $1 million by 1,160, then I will have the unit cost of one graduate student. So that's what we have to do here. So our next task is to find out the equivalent units. Equivalent units, as I showed in my last video, is very easy. Find out the total number of units that you have transferred to the next level, next department, plus the number that are waiting, multiply them by their degrees of completion. So we have already transferred 370,000 units to the next department. So those 370 are 100% as regards material and 100% as regards labor and overhead. But the remaining 80,000, the incomplete or partially complete 80,000 would need to be multiplied by their degrees of completions, respective degrees of completion. So 80,000 as far as material was concerned is only 50% complete, was 50% complete. You can see here, these are the numbers. We have 80,000, so 370,000 have gone to the next department, plus 80,000 units are still here. They're languishing, they're hanging here. And then that is multiplied by the 50% that their respective degrees of completion. So how much we completed these units in terms of materials? We have done 50% of the work. Then in terms of labor and overhead, we have done only 25%. So 80,000 times 50% is 40,000, and 80% times 25% is 20,000 units. So now add the 40,000 to 370, that gives you total equivalent units as far as materials are concerned. So 370 plus, you can see here I've done that 370 plus the 40,000. So I've drawn a single line, means I wanted to park this information there. So park it there and then do some more work. So 370 plus 40,000 makes it 410 in terms of complete units as far as materials are concerned. And then 370 plus 20 is 390. 370 plus 20 is also 390. So now we have the equivalent units and we just need to divide the total cost by the equivalent units. So our total cost of material is how much? This is our total cost of material, $943,000, I guess. Yes, $943,000. And then for labor and overhead, the amounts are $351,000 and $702,000 respectively. So divide the total material cost by total equivalent units. So 943 divided by 410, that gives you the $2.30 per unit of material, per unit material cost. And then per unit labor cost would be 351,000 divided by 390, which is 90 cents, and 702,000 divided by 390,000, which is $1.80, $1.80. So now if we add the three, we're going to get the unit cost of a complete product, which would be $2.30 plus 90 cents plus $1.80. Add the three, there's the unit cost of a complete product that goes to the next department. These are not ready for sale yet because we are going to do more work in the finishing department, maybe more material based on the information that I saw in the question. They have added even material in the second department. In many questions in traditional type of settings or textbooks, we don't normally see material being added in second and third departments. But here, it is possible for you to add material at any stage, but it is more customary to put all the materials in the first process and then just labor and overhead in the second and third processes. Anyway, that's beside the point again. So what you need to do is add these three unit costs, $2.30 and 90 cents and $1.80, to find the unit cost of a complete transferred unit to the finishing department. And then we'll repeat the process and find out the unit cost of a complete finished paint, and then we're going to sell it. All right. So now the cost reconciliation, you can see we had to account for $943,000 of material cost, and we have accounted for it here. So how do we account for? We have two types of output. Some output are ready to and have already been transferred to the next department, finishing department. So what is their cost? So now multiply, how many units have you sent? How many you sent? 370,000 units to the next department. So 370 times $2.30 is your total material cost. And the same 370 times 90 cents is your total labor cost. And then same 370,000 times $1.80 is your overhead cost. So these are the costs of the units that have been sent to the next department. So that's how we have accounted for these numbers. And then what we still have is 80,000 units. So 80,000 times 50% is 40,000. So 40,000 times the $2.30. 40,000 times $2.30 is your, see, $92,000. So there's the total material cost of the finished goods inventory at the end of April in the fab, in the base fab department. And then the same here, the number of units is 80,000. Remember, 80,000 times 25%, because for labor and overhead, they are only 25% complete. So 80,000 is the total number of units in our ending work in process, multiplied by 25% gives you 20,000 and also 20,000. So 20,000 times 90 cents is, you can do it even without a calculator, 20,000 times 90 cents is actually $18,000, and 20,000 times $1.80 is $36,000. Just double the 18,000. So now if you add the two costs, the two lots, you'll find the total amount of material cost that you have accounted for. And see, it is 943. And you can see the number here is also 943. And how much labor we needed to account for? We needed to account for $351,000 of labor, and we have accounted for $351,000 of labor here. And we have done the same for overhead. We needed to account for $702,000 here. Look at it. And then we have added, we have accounted for $702,000 of overhead here. All right, so that's the solution to the mathematical component of the question of the review problem. And then in addition, I'll come and talk a little bit more about it later. But in addition to that, the problem also wanted us to show the journal entries. The journal entries, as I said, are also easy because we follow the same cycle. Just remember, when you purchase material, you debit material, credit accounts payable or cash. Then when you issue it, in case of job costing, it goes to jobs, work in process. In case of process costing, it goes to the same work in process. But we don't use the qualifier job number ABC or job number 101. We say process A. So in this case, we'll say work in process. So as we issue material to a particular process, we'll say debit work in process, base fab department, and credit materials, because it is coming from raw materials inventory. And then we do the same for the finishing department. All the material that you send to the finishing department, you'll say work in process, finishing department debit, and credit would be raw materials inventory. Then you add labor, again work in process, credit would be cash or salaries and wages payable. Overhead would be again work in process, debit, and credit would be manufacturing overhead. Remember, this is not overhead accumulation, this is overhead application. So when overhead is applied, we debit work in process. Everything goes to the same bucket, and the bucket's name is work in process. All right. So that's how we added the material, labor and overhead during the month of April, and then we transferred some to the next department. So when there is interdepartmental transfer, what is the nature of the transfer? Is that it goes from my process to your process, from my machine to your machine. So the receiving machine is work in process debit. So in this case, it's going from the base fab department to the finishing department. So it's a work in process finishing department debit and work in process base fab department credit. Okay, so from base fab to finishing, and then from finishing department to finished goods. When it goes to finished goods, we debit finished goods inventory and credit base fab work in process. Sorry, finishing work in process. The name of this second department is also finishing, so it's a bit confusing. Finished goods as well as finishing. So the title is the finishing. The title of the name of the department, second department, is the finishing department. But once the finishing department finishes the job, it becomes finished goods, isn't it? So it goes to finished goods inventory. It's upon final completion. So debit finished goods inventory and credit work in process finishing department. So just remember that when Karim gives something to say Rahim, then Rahim is debit. So debit Rahim, credit Karim. When Karim receives something, then you'd say debit Karim, and credit would be the giver. So when goods are transferred, whether it's complete or incomplete, I mean, of course, we don't send out any incomplete units, but in terms of the big picture, these are incomplete, aren't they? Like if you move something from, say, the dyeing department to weaving, or weaving to finishing, or spinning to say the dyeing, then these are essentially incomplete. But these are complete as far as the work of that particular department is concerned. So that's what matters. So when all the work within a particular department is over, then it is ready to go to the next department. So the receiving department's work in process is debit, and the giving department's work in process is credit. And then when the final process finishes their work, it goes to finished goods warehouse, or finished goods, say the showcases, or wherever we place our finished goods. So in that case, we say debit finished goods inventory, and credit would be work in process of the very last department. And then when it's sold, we debit cost of goods sold and credit finished goods inventory. All right, so those journal entries are given at the beginning. So this whole problem is solved. You have it actually solved in the textbook or in your ebook, but nevertheless, I thought a discussion would be helpful. So I hope you are going to find it useful, and I'll see you in our next video. And the next one is going to be on either, as I said, on either cost behavior or on cost volume profit relationships on chapter 5. Thank you. Bye-bye.